It has come to my attention that 81 countries, including India, China, the United States, are all experimenting with their own national cryptocurrency. This might be the most ill-informed thing I have ever heard. Now, if you haven't been living under a massive rock for a couple years, you've heard of cryptocurrencies. They're these brilliant technologies that people are very divided on. It's either the most brilliant thing ever that's going to change the world and it's going to solve world poverty and hunger and all that, or it's a complete bubble and it's a sham and it's a total scam and you should not pay any attention to it whatsoever. There's a very small middle ground. You're either in one camp or the other. But the major governments around the world and their central banks, which kind of run their financial systems, are starting to get a little intimidated by how much activity is really happening in these different cryptocurrencies. And I can understand that. Bitcoin, for instance, if you convert your cash into Bitcoin and start making all sorts of transactions, the government can no longer track that. They have no idea if your money is, funding terrorism or money laundering of some sort. They have no idea. So it's very important that the government kind of keeps eyes and keeps tabs on where money is and how it's circulating. So over time, these governments have warmed up to these cryptocurrencies, and in fact, they're starting to think about competing with them by launching their own cryptocurrencies. And if you have any understanding of kind of where crypto came from, you are gonna easily understand that that might be the dumbest thing you've ever heard. And please, enlighten me if I'm wrong in the comments below. Try to maybe rebuttal me or help me understand why governments are doing this. But in my view, this just seems like a bunch of politicians who have absolutely no idea what the heck they're talking about, trying to stay on top of things. And I know what you might be thinking. Hey, Josh, don't we already have digital currencies? Like, I transact in my US dollars or my Canadian dollars through my banking app, and I don't really use cash anymore. Well, not exactly. The reality is that our financial system, although the way it's displayed to you is very digital, it's very analog. Behind the scenes, the plumbing between payment providers and financial services companies, the big banks, and the monetary authority of your country, like the Federal Reserve or the Bank of Canada or the Bank of China, these different institutions all have very analog back ends and only really display to you digitally. Now, what they're talking about in terms of a digital currency is where a company has its own cryptocurrency that creates a physical one-to-one relationship between you and the Federal Reserve, or between you and your central bank. Instead of having to work through some financial institution, you have a crypto wallet that is with the bank of your country. Central banks kind of cite the benefits of this, that it might actually increase the efficiency of transactions in the economy if we don't have to settle different transactions between multiple people and it can go from, peer to peer with a government currency. They also cite things like, a lot of Americans, I think it's something ridiculous, like 6% of Americans don't have a bank account. That doesn't even make sense to me. How do you survive if you don't have a bank account? But I mean, even if there are toddlers and babies in the stats, maybe what they're trying to do is create toddler hodlers. All in all, they're trying to create more accessibility for people to get involved in the financial system. And what's my take on this? I think that's complete baloney. That is total bullshit. This is all about controlling and overseeing where the money is in an economy and trying to maybe get a little bit of market share back from cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum that have the spotlight. If it seems weird how pessimistic I am about this whole thing, I think it requires you to understand a little bit of the backdrop. And I'll say this really quickly. The backdrop of cryptocurrency is we had this event in 2008, which was a massive financial crisis, where a lot of private games were played between wealthy elites, and the losses were essentially made public so that all the taxpayers had to pay for it. And the government came in and they bailed out massive financial institutions that made horrible decisions, and the CEOs and the shareholders of those companies took massive bonuses. So you have a system where the elite is doing extremely well and the populace kind of gets screwed over, and they have to spend the rest of their days paying taxes to repay all of those losses. That's not great. We have massive protests like Occupy Wall Street, and you see these different class divides happening. And the reason is because the central bank of the country, in this case the Federal Reserve in 2008, had to print a ton of money out of thin air to get itself out of that problem. And who ends up footing the bill? If you go into work every single day doing what it is that you do and receiving a paycheck for that, but inflation is killing every dollar you earn, you start to get a little disgruntled by the fact that yes, yes, I'm producing and earning and working in this economy, but the currency isn't stable. The currency keeps inflating. And that is really the backdrop that created Bitcoin in the first place. So we have this growing distrust with the monetary authority like the Federal Reserve amongst the culture. And then we get something like Edward Snowden, this whole story about how the government might be spying on us and the NSA, and none of your transactions are safe because the government and their big data can track every single thing you do. All of these different elements come together to create this distrust in the authority of a country and in the monetary authority. So Bitcoin comes out as this unbelievable solution to a problem. What if we could have a currency that isn't regulated and isn't centralized and isn't controlled by anybody? What if we were able to create a platform that runs itself and it governs itself, and if anybody tries to change it, it doesn't work. It can't be changed. And that was the foundational idea behind Bitcoin. So now, when you're telling me that a country like the USA or China or any of these different places wants to create their own cryptocurrency to compete with Bitcoin, I laugh. Frankly, I laugh at that because that's like the equivalent of me shooting you and then offering you a Band-Aid with my face on it. I don't know. It's like promoting the fact that I hurt you, and now you're gonna go and use my cryptocurrency. It makes absolutely no sense. In my opinion, a government created and mandated cryptocurrency will have this much traction, not 0. It will have 0 traction amongst the crypto community. It will not happen. People will not switch over because it violates the fundamental principle behind why Bitcoin was started in the first place. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, Josh, like maybe they're not trying to compete with Bitcoin and Ethereum. Maybe they're not trying to compete at all. Maybe they're authentic and genuine in their desire to make financial services more accessible and to increase transaction times and all these things. Maybe they're kind-hearted. But that makes no sense because that's like cheating on your wife. And why is it like cheating on your wife? Because the banks and the big government are in the same bed. You need to understand how closely intertwined a country's banks and its government are. The banks of a country have the ability and the authority to create new money, and they assist the Federal Reserve or whoever the central bank is in setting monetary policy. Interest rates, all these sorts of things are done through the banks. So if you create a government mandated cryptocurrency that is now going to take all of that transaction revenue of your entire economy away from your large banks, and you're going to build your own digital currency, you're essentially shooting yourself in the foot because the financial infrastructure that you have in place, the banks, your wife, if you're the government, it is absolutely imperative for the function and the establishment of government to have a good relationship with its banking system if it wants to have a good, well-functioning capitalist system. So in my view, why would the government decide that we want to cheat on our wife by creating a cryptocurrency and screwing over the banks just in such a way that we can try to compete with the existing cryptocurrencies that will have 0 interest in us whatsoever? To me, it just seems so misguided. It seems like it completely lacks context about what's going on. But that's just my opinion. Maybe I have a massive blind spot, and I would love for you to point that out because that's what I'm thinking, guys. And when I think I'm this right about something, it very well means I could be wrong. So please, let me know below in the comments if you think that's a bunch of rubbish. But anyways, if you enjoy me ranting about these things like cryptocurrencies and learning about different aspects of the financial system and our economy, that's what this channel is all about. It's about learning about personal finance and investing. And if you guys got any value out of this video whatsoever, make sure to hit that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on post notifications for more videos just like this one every single week. Until next time.